One of the biggest stories in Ontario over the summer was the almost unprecedented deterioration of the relationship between the majority of the province's doctors, the government, and frankly, the doctors' own bargaining agent, the Ontario Medical Association. As you'll recall, Ontario's doctors, by an overwhelming 2-to-1 margin, rejected the tentative agreement worked out between the OMA and the Ministry of Health. What does this mean for Ontario's healthcare system, for patient care? And are doctors minding their own bottom lines or their patients' best interests? Let's get into this. In Kingston, Ontario, here's Dr. Richard Resnick. He is the Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences at Queen's University. And here in our studio, Dr. Michael Gordon. He is the former head of geriatrics and internal medicine at Baycrest Health Sciences. They both supported the Physician Services Agreement. Opposing that agreement, Dr. Nadia Alam, family doctor and anesthesiologist in Georgetown, Ontario, and one of the founders of Concerned Ontario Doctors, and Dr. Sohail Gandhi, family doctor at the Stainer Medical Centre near Collingwood, Ontario, and we are grateful for all of you joining us here tonight at TVO for the first program of this, our 11th season here on TVO.
Thank you, Steve.
I'm not going to assume that everybody is up to speed on this because a lot of this broke over the summer when people are away at cottages, so let's take a moment here just to fill everybody in on some of the background, and then we'll go from there. For example, Shelton, if you would, these are some of the bullet points in the tentative Physician Services Agreement reached by the OMA and the province. For example, a 2.5% increase in compensation per year for 4 years. Not exactly, but sort of. We'll continue. Additional one-time annual payments from $50 million to $120 million to doctors. Scaling back payments to the highest earning specialists. Financial incentives for doctors if they can get their patients to use the healthcare system less. A promise by the government that doctors would, quote, co-manage the physician services budget. A commitment by the government not to impose further unilateral cuts on physicians, as it did 3 times over the past few years. No commitment, however, by the government to settle the entire dispute with binding arbitration, which many doctors want, but a commitment to bring in a neutral arbitrator who could resolve intractable matters issue by issue. All right, let's get into this. Dr. Resnick, start us off if you would. Generally speaking, why were you in favor of this agreement?
Well, Steve, thanks for having me today. And as you say, I was in favor of the agreement. And I'll give you 3 reasons. The first is to understand the context. Ontario is in a serious debt situation. We're paying over $11 billion just to service the debt. And we could spend all morning talking about how to reconcile that. But the reality is that the government is in a position where it's going to have to hold budget lines. Healthcare is 39% of our provincial budget, and doctors' compensation is a big component of that. So in holding budget lines, if our physician compensation budget was to escalate significantly, it would have to come from somewhere else, from the teaching sector, from infrastructure, from roads. And also in context, doctors have done reasonably well over the course of the last decade, and we're the second highest paid group of physicians, province by province, across the country. The second, perhaps more important, is that we've been in a situation of paralysis over the last 2 years. As you mentioned, there have been unilateral cuts, certainly not in favor of that approach. But more importantly, no new programming has been able to evolve. We've not been at the table with conversations, and I think it's critical that we get back to the table. And finally, the agreement calls for a co-management process. There's lots that we have to do with the fee schedule. We have to modernize it. We have to deal with issues of relativity. And that shouldn't be done unilaterally by the government. It should be done with a bilateral table with physicians. So the agreement's not perfect, but I believe that it has enough elements in it that show a positive way forward.
Dr. Gordon, why did you feel you could support the agreement?
So I echo everything that was just said. Having been around this block many times over many years, I have found that when you have hostility between the government, whichever government it is, and a group of people such as doctors that are esteemed by the public, it never ends up being good for anybody. We have a duty as doctors to our patients. That's who we are. That's our duties and obligations. Obviously, we have duties to ourselves and our families to have a reasonable living. But our primary concern has to be to the well-being of the public. That's to whom we are beholden. And what I found in the last few years, and I've been through the previous hostilities before, some of which were really terrible, My feeling was that with all that's happened in the last few years, the time has come to try, in an imperfect world, which it is, something that's a little bit different, which includes, as was just said, the co-management, which is not easy. Anybody who's been in an administrative position, which I have been in, knows it's like steering a battleship. If you move it a quarter of a degree, you may have accomplished a great deal. And it's hard work. And I wanted to give that opportunity to work there because, as a friend of mine who wrote a book called Always Change a Losing Game, this was a losing game and we had to change it.
Dr. Allen, why did you feel you could not support the agreement?
So as soon as I read the 6-page contract, I looked at it and realized this contract isn't going to serve my ability to provide good patient care. And it's not going to serve the ability of hundreds of and thousands of physicians across Ontario to be able to provide good patient care. For the past nearly 2 years, we've been fighting against underfunding of the system, Steve, and this contract sets us up for more. We know that historical averages for growth in physician services to match patient need averages between 3 and 5%. So this 2.5% increase is still lowballing it. After a year and a half of escalating cuts that have totaled about 7 to 30% for individual physicians out in Ontario, so not physicians as a group, but individual practices out in Ontario, a 2.5 increase doesn't improve things by much. It actually is a drop in the bucket of what's actually needed. So that gross underfunding just isn't acceptable. The other thing that was really hard for me to accept personally, and speaking for hundreds of physicians around Ontario, is the fact that there was a hard cap. That 2.5%, we're not allowed to go over it. There's not much of a cushion that the government was willing to offer. So the question became, what do we do if we hit that hard cap? What do I say to the patient in front of me who's requesting a test, who needs an investigation, who needs a consultation, who needs a surgery? What do I say to them when I hit that 2.5% cap? Do I say, I'm sorry, the government isn't willing to fund it? Do I pay out of pocket for their care? The morality of it and the ethics of it are casting a huge pall over the TPSA, and that was why I said no.
TPSA, Tentative Physician Services Agreement.
Yes.
We're in an acronym-free zone here.
All right, we'll remember that.
Okay, Dr. Gandhi, why couldn't you support it?
So for me, there were two big reasons, Steve. The first big reason is that, unfortunately, as has been pointed out, there's been a significant deterioration of trust between the physicians in general and the Ontario government, and in particular with Dr. Hoskins. Dr. Hoskins, as health minister, has taken the tack that it's better to try and divide physicians by vilifying them and by attacking them in public. As a result of that, if you're going to enter into an agreement with someone you do not trust, you have to have enshrined in the agreement enough safeguards to make sure that that government is going to do what they say they were. Now, when the agreement was promoted to all of us, people were talking about, oh, well, it will lead to things like co-management of the healthcare system, which it doesn't. There's only 2 clauses in there where co-management could reasonably be assumed to occur, and that's with the physician services budget and also the physician human resources. There was no co-management of the LHINs or e-health or hospitals or anything like that. It was not co-management of the healthcare system.
Just the budget.
Just the budget, right? So let's be clear about this. You need to have safeguards built into the agreement. There weren't. It was 6 pages long. There was 1 safeguard built into the agreement, and that's with the arbitrator, and I'm willing to concede that on the physician services budget. But on everything else, there was no safeguards built into the agreement. It was all motherhood and apple pie type statements about, well, doctors, they're important, and well, thank you. I think most people agree with that, but you need to put safeguards in. The second thing is, in my personal opinion, if I had approved this agreement, I would be giving tacit approval to Bill 210. And Bill 210 is significantly going to diminish patient care, and it's going to significantly make life harder for all of my patients.
You should just explain, that's being debated at the legislature in committee right now.
That's right.
Many doctors don't like it because why?
Because it bureaucratizes medicine even more than now. It gives the government power. If you read through the legislation, a lot of what says in B12 is by order of the Lieutenant Governor and Council, which just means whatever the health minister wants. It allows him to direct care. It allows him to set standards for care without consultation. It allows him to determine, there's one section that says determine practice patterns and acceptance of patients and not accepting physicians. So there's a lot of Orwellian talk in Bill 210.
And you weren't about to endorse that.
And by saying that I agree to this agreement, only 2 clauses from Bill 210 requiring the OMA to be the representative body of physicians, those were the only 2 clauses that potentially could be removed. It wasn't, it wasn't for sure that they would be, but potentially. And the rest of it, we were kind of tacitly approving it, and I can't do that to my patients.
Okay, let me put some of those criticisms to Dr. Resnick and see what he has to say about that. Let's just pick one, Dr. Resnick. For example, Dr. Allam's concerned that if a patient comes to her and she's already hit that 2.5% cap, what's she supposed to say to that patient? Sorry, you got to go home, I can't help you, or what?
So I think that's a highly unlikely scenario to happen, that at an individual doctor level, there's going to have to be some kind of reconciliation or a rationing of care at the individual patient level. It's not going to happen. Look, the government and the OMA have had a hard look at what 2.5% will do to the roughly 11% of our GDP that we're spending on healthcare, and what 2.5% will do to the physician compensation budget. And this was aided by some analysis from an independent third party, ISIS, of the Institute of Clinical Evaluative Sciences. And the data shows, looking at the run rate and looking at the predictions, that it's likely that we'll be able to manage the current spend on patient care given that current envelope. So it's not going to play out at an individual doctor level. I highly doubt that.
Dr. Allam, what about that?
I looked at the ISIS study, actually. It only looks at fee-for-service payments, which only comprises about 2/3 of physician services budget. The other 1/3 is not accounted for by the ISIS study. And it did say that growth in fee-for-service payments is expected to be around 2%. However, one, it ignores ignores all of the alternative funding payments that are offered, including primary care as well as specialty care. 2, it's a retrospective study. You can't use that to predict and forecast what actual growth will be. It also ignores inflation. We had an economist who looked, Dr. Jack Carr, he's a professor emeritus at U of T in economics, and he looked at the proposed contract. And he said that physicians are ignoring inflation, the effects of inflation, to their own peril.
Let me put that to Dr. Gordon. I have heard this criticism that 2.5% increase doesn't take into account the graying of the population, which needs more intensive care. You know more about that than anybody, having run Baycrest. Doesn't take into account inflation. Therefore, 2.5% isn't really 2.5%.
Yeah, it could be. That may be so. I mean, the way I look at it, maybe I tend to take a very high-level view of the realities that was pointed out early. If you were running your household and you found that you couldn't afford to do something, you would come to terms on how to do it. We are running a major household. It's called the province of Ontario, but it could be the country of the UK that just went through a major thing. We all have to face this. So one way or the other, you make decisions, and you try to mitigate the bad outcomes of decisions by taking into account the best you can. So although it might happen that we have a shortfall, I actually also do not believe it'll happen on the individual level. And I've been through many budget cuts in my life, at the macro level, provincial, at the micro level, my own organization, and in between. And one way or the other, we always find ways to deal with them, because as physicians, that's our duties and responsibilities. We'll find ways to do it. Okay, and I think that we would in this way. I do not believe, as was pointed out earlier, that at an individual patient interaction with a doctor, I would have to say, it happens in some parts of the world, just south of us, and I've seen it with my own family, I can't do this for you because the budget no longer allows it, the HMO no longer allows it. I don't believe that's going to happen.
Now, let's do a real life example here, and I don't want to embarrass you here, but you talked about this publicly, right? At the general membership meeting at the Exhibition Place in Toronto over the summer. You talked about the fact that you basically went without salary for 3 months, right? At one point? What's the story there? What happened?
So it goes back to the cuts over 2015. So as you mentioned already, physicians faced unilateral cuts by the government that were imposed on them, averaging between 7% and 30%. In 2015, my youngest baby was born, so I was on mat leave. I had saved up for it. I'd worked extra hard just before my mat leave to save up for covering myself over mat leave. Once I came back from mat leave and started work again, I found that even though I was working equally hard, I still wasn't making as much. That 7% cut is huge. That 30% cut, it's huge. And at the end of the year, I was looking at a 30% drop in my income. So I did go about 3 months without paying myself, just living off my savings and my credit card and my line of credit, just to keep my own clinic going. And this is playing out.
But you did keep the clinic going.
I did keep my clinic going.
And you kept paying your staff.
I did.
And seeing patients.
I did. And that was the hard reality that my husband and my tiny family had to face. But this is playing out among physicians across Ontario and has been playing out since January 2015. Some physicians have even had to close their clinics because they just couldn't make do. Dr.
Resnick, does this sound like an anomalous situation to you, or is there more of this going on than we know?
Well, obviously I know our community here at Queen's best, and certainly I haven't seen what Dr. Allen has just described happening here at Queen's. I would point out that if this agreement were to have been accepted, it would end the unilateral cuts, which I agree with Dr. Allen were unwise and unwarranted. But we'll also see an infusion of approximately $1 billion to the physician compensation budget over the next few years if this agreement were to be agreed to. Look, we live in a publicly funded health system, and you know, right now we're spending 11% of our GDP on healthcare, and we're performing, you know, if we compare ourselves to other countries, 10th out of 11th in a recent Commonwealth health report. So there's lots of room for improvement. Look, the hospitals have been under tremendous pressure, it being the largest single cost in the system, and they've made great strides in becoming more efficient. I think we can also find ways to deliver excellent care to our patients at a cost that we can all afford.
Dr. Gandy, let me raise with you, what do we want to call it here, the dirty little secret of Ontario's healthcare system, which is there are too many patients seeking unnecessary care, demanding second and third and fourth opinions and extra tests that turn out to be not necessary. There's a lot of money blown in the healthcare system. Isn't that fair to say? And if the government wants to sort of bring you on side to help co-manage that excessive and inappropriate use, isn't that okay?
So, Steve, actually, the inappropriate and excessive use of healthcare is not so much what you're describing, because there is a small segment of patients who do ask for certain tests that are inappropriate. In my practice, it's not a big amount, quite frankly. I've seen some of it, but I've not seen a lot of it.
Tell me about your practice again. You're in Stayner.
I'm in Stayner.
Collingwood. You and how many other docs?
We have 5 doctors in Stayner.
And how many patients roughly among all of you?
So probably about 7,000.
7,000 patients?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've not actually seen very much of that. The inappropriateness of the healthcare system lies solely in the overwhelmingly bureaucratic mess that's in. We have far too many bureaucrats. We have, and this is true, we have 2 times as many healthcare bureaucrats per capita as Japan, 3 times as many per capita as Sweden, 4 times as many per capita as Australia.
Why do you think?
Why do I think?
Yeah, why is that the case?
Because bureaucracy is self-perpetuating, right? And every time that the government says, oh, we've got an issue we need to deal with, instead of dealing with frontline doctors and talking to frontline doctors about how to help it, they create another committee or another agency to deal with that issue. And that's where the real waste, that's the dirty little secret of the Ontario healthcare system.
Dr. Gordon, you've run a
Well,
big...
having been one of those dirty little secret bearers, I disagree with you. I think that we have, as a profession, denigrated those who do the administration. I remember when I started doing it, people said, how could you do that? It's like selling yourself out. Of all the things I've done in my career, the most challenging, the hardest was being an administrator, because big decisions were made that affected thousands of people as opposed to the one person at a time. So I don't look at that as a particular dirty little secret, and whether we're better or worse than other countries, you can do a lot of comparisons.
No, I said the dirty little secret was the fact that there are inappropriate tests being given.
Yeah, so that part, I think that's a smaller part of the issue than we like to do. And when you do studies on it, you actually find that it isn't that much. They did a big one, I think it was in Kingston, looking at upper respiratory tract infections and visits to emerge. And they found that actually those who actually went in usually had something more than their cold, and that's why they went in, because the usual things weren't working. So I don't think that's a big cost to the system. How we as stewards of the system, the doctors, use the resources is very hard to understand, and that requires really good studies, because when you do find something, that's changeable. So if somebody is using a test that is no longer the standard, and it's costly as well, and wasting everybody's time, that's something you do by showing the evidence that it's no longer an indicated test.
Let me get into this with Dr. Resnick. Let's get really down to ground zero here. The fact that this agreement failed, the OMA and the province worked out an agreement. 63% of Ontario doctors who voted turned thumbs down on it. So there is no agreement. There's no physician services agreement in the province today between doctors and the government. How does that affect patient care in the province today, in your view, Dr. Resnick?
Well, so I think we're in a regrettable situation that we don't have an agreement, and we'll have to continue for another period of time without an agreement, which, as I mentioned at the beginning, has created a bit of a caustic environment. To be honest, I don't think it's going to materially affect the day-to-day interaction. Today, patients are being seen here in Kingston, and tomorrow patients are going to be seen in Kingston. So, and the money continues to flow, both to physicians and hospitals and everywhere else in the health sector. But it does underscore the desperate need to get back to the table, to do a bit of a retrospective now. I think we have to be respectful that 60% of doctors voted against the agreement, and there needs to be a major rethink, but an urgent need to get back to the table. As Dr. Gordon said, we can't be in physicians where we have physicians fighting with physicians over this. We have to unify, meet with the government, and hammer out a new agreement.
How, Dr. Allam, is the Ontario Medical Association and the province of Ontario supposed to get back to the table when what was revealed by the vote seems to be, anyway, that the OMA really doesn't have a good feel for what its own members think?
I think that this is it's a wake-up call for the OMA to become more responsive to the voices of frontline physicians, and to see how the unilateral actions and the ongoing cuts, because all of those cuts that started in 2015, they're still going on. How those cuts are actually impairing the ability of physicians in the trenches, their ability to provide patient care. Even by interacting with physicians, I mean, there are about 11,000, 12,000 physicians on the Facebook forum for Concerned Ontario Doctors. That's one way of reaching out to physicians. Teletown halls, road shows, all of that. Those are ways of reaching out to frontline doctors and getting their input on what they want to see out of a new relationship with the government.
But Dr. Gandy, the Minister of Health, Eric Hoskins, is sitting in his office right now at the Mowat Block, well, maybe not at this hour of the evening, but you know what I'm saying, saying to himself, we got an agreement. The province got an agreement with the OMA. It's the doctors themselves who turned thumbs down on the agreement. What's he supposed to do? As far as he's concerned, he done good.
So, you know, I can tell you what I would do if I was him. I can't speak for him. One of the things that was crystal clear in the out of the vote was that physicians really felt that there was a power imbalance between the government and themselves, and they requested independent binding arbitration. And Dr. Hoskins has been quite candid in the past about saying, oh, well, you know, there was Justice Wilkins and how he sided with us and the government, and his conciliator's report was all Winkler, sorry, my apologies. And he sided with us, and he was our impartial referee. Well, you know, fair enough.
That's accurate.
It's true. Well, then why don't you just appoint an arbitrator? Because if your team did so well the last time, then you might as well appoint an independent binding arbitrator, have your team that got Winkler on side negotiate as well under that cloak. The physicians will have to go with whatever agreement. In that circumstance, physicians are going to have to agree to whatever the arbitrator comes up with. It's really not that hard.
Dr. Gordon, what about that? Binding arbitration to settle this dispute once and for all.
It's certainly one of the methodologies used. We use it in the world of diplomacy. We use it in all kinds of labor conflicts.
If you were the health minister, would you agree to it?
I would certainly consider it strongly as one of the options to break the impasse, because I think the worst thing that can happen to all of us collectively is a long-standing impasse, because things will not get accomplished that we all want to get accomplished, however we interpret them. So an arbitrator is one of the ways of diffusing the problem, and it's used, and usually it works. Not always, but usually it works.
Let me try this with Dr. Resnick. I believe the health minister's position is, sure, binding arbitration is up for consideration in our discussions with the OMA, but if you want me to give you binding arbitration, you got to give me something. What should the doctors give up, in your view, Dr. Resnick, to the province of Ontario in order to have binding arbitration settle this thing once and for all?
Yeah, well, I think what Minister Hoskins has said is that there could be binding arbitration, but within a corridor. Of course, the OMA believes that isn't really binding arbitration, and so they've launched a charter challenge, and I think that's going to work its way through the courts, and it's going to take 3 or 4 years for that to work its way through the courts. My view is, and as I said, this agreement's not perfect, but I think we can't afford 3 or 4 years of this caustic and chilled environment, and we need to get back to the table. So I think there is hope that the OMA will listen to Dr. Allen, Dr. Gandhi, and their colleagues. They've heard their voice, can get back to the table, and I think the government will seriously enter into negotiations again.
Dr. Allen, do you see any value in the Ontario Medical Association's launching this lawsuit against the province of Ontario to try to get binding arbitration as a means of settling this dispute?
I do. I think it shows that physicians are no longer willing to accept whatever scraps the government's willing to hand out. I think it shows that physicians are going to take a firm line and continue to advocate for their ability to provide patient care. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's good that physicians are speaking up. I think it's good that physicians are marching at Queen's Park. I think it's good that physicians have petitions going. Patients like it. They like that we're speaking.
Patients like seeing their doctors in white coats down at Queen's Park carrying picket signs?
They do.
They do?
They like that we're fighting for them. They see what's happened to the system with underfunding.
Do they think you're fighting for them, or do they think they're fighting for your bottom line?
I think that most of them believe that we're fighting for them. I think that some may not. However, I think the vast majority feel that we're in it for the right reasons. We're sick and tired of the wait lists. We're sick and tired of the fact that there are specialists who are now unable, whose wait lists are so long, they're unable to actually accept new referrals until 2017. Months from now, they understand that physicians want the best for their patients. They want patients to get care when they're sick, not years down the road, when they're actually sick, when it would make a difference in their own lives.
Okay, let me follow up on this, and to do that, Sheldon, we're going to go to board number 2 here in a moment, because I think the first criticism you had in saying why you would vote no to this agreement was you got to draw a line in the sand on the underfunding of the healthcare system in Ontario once and for all. We're spending north of $50 billion a year, incidentally, but let's put this up. This is from CIHI, the Canadian Institute of Health Information, which I think everybody would agree is a pretty respected, nonpartisan organization that put out a report last month, and here are 3 of the findings it had. Number 1, Ontario doctors are the second highest paid in Canada, about $2,000 a year on average, lower than Alberta. For the 9th year in a row, the number of Canadian physicians per capita has grown, and there are more doctors per capita in Ontario than anywhere else in the country. This is from CIHI. You're both shaking your head there, but that's from CIHI. What does that, Dr. Gandhi, you first, what does that say to you about how underfunded the Ontario healthcare system actually is?
So I don't think the healthcare system is underfunded. That's my personal position. I think that there's a lot of mismanagement in the healthcare system, so just to be clear about that. As far as the CIHI data goes, I didn't read this year's report. I read last year's report when Dr. Hoskins made essentially the same statements. And last year's report was 80 pages long. And so out of an 80-page report, he took one single statement that said, okay, on average, Ontario physicians are the highest billers, and left it at that, and ignored every other point in the agreement that at that point showed that we're actually 7th in all of Canada in terms of physicians per capita. It talked about how physicians are working many more hours in Ontario than they are in other provinces. So obviously, if you work more, you're going to bill more. It talked about a number of family physicians that were taking patients, which is less than 10% of all family physicians are currently taking patients. So all of those things, all of those type of things are also in CIHI. So it's really good ministerial spin to take 2 or 3 points out and publish it and repeat it, but it's not the full report.
All right, let me get feedback from Dr. Resnick on this. What do you believe? Does the CIHI report shed any light on whether you believe the system in Ontario is underfunded?
Yeah, well, I think it does. And as I said, as a country, and our province of Ontario echoes the rest of the country, as a country, we're spending amongst the highest in the world on healthcare. Of course, the United States spends a lot more, but we're second or third highest in the world. So I think that gives us a frame of reference for whether our healthcare system is underfunded or not. And Ontario doctors have done well. You know, when you analyze the facts over the last decade, there have been long stretches of 6% increase per year to physician compensation, and on average, over a decade period, our doctors are making about $100,000 more than they were 10 years ago. So, look, we would all think that we'd love to pay doctors as much as we can, but the reality is we have to live within the context of a budget. So I do think the CIHI data shed some light on this whole discussion.
Dr. Gordon, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll tell you, to say that the doctors are getting the scraps, to me, just does not ring well. Again, I looked at some other data about where Canada sits in the world, the Western world. Sweden, Switzerland, Denmark, we're pretty high up there. Other than the United States, which has enormous anomalies in how doctors are paid and manage care. But the ratio of physician salary to industrial general average is almost universal, depending on the country. And we're right up there. We're only below the Netherlands, the United States, and I think one other country. We're sixth from the top, which is pretty good. So scraps is not the word I'd use. Looking at my own experience in Toronto, which of course is its own anomaly, in geriatrics, which is its own anomaly, I watched us at the bottom of the heap, geriatrics, and yet people went into it because they loved it, to a huge increase. I feel like Bernie Sanders now. Huge increase.
Huge.
Huge. I grew up in the same neighborhood. Huge increase. So that geriatricians who used to be really at the bottom are somewhere in, I'll say the meat, but that was the result of very, very careful, thoughtful agreements between the Ministry of Health and the OMA in their fee schedule. So I can't comment on what every doctor's earning, because, you know, you only see the doctors you work with and whoever in the parking lot on which you park and et cetera, in the houses in which you go. And certainly we're not getting the scraps. If I were an Ontarian and I heard us talk about us getting the scraps, I'd say, wow, where do you live?
Okay, having said that, I want to bring it back to patient care. This would be a problem for patients, I guess, Dr. Allen, if this agreement, which was rejected, and the relationship between the doctors and the province is so bad that people stop wanting to go to med school here, that people don't want to be doctors here anymore, that they go to the United States, or that they just say to hell with it, I'm going to go do something else. Do you think things are that bad that we're looking at that kind of future?
I think we are. I think we're repeating history. We saw this happen in the 1990s. It would be foolish of us to ignore the lessons learned from the 1990s, where the government took a similar tact of taking a slash and burn approach to physician services budget in an effort to control the healthcare system budget. The physician services budget is a portion of the healthcare system's budget. It makes up 20%. There's still 80% of money, of tax dollars that aren't being accounted for. By cutting physicians, you still don't address that other 80%. Money that's saved from physician services doesn't go into funding the rest of the healthcare system, right? And so it's disingenuous, I believe, of combining the two. We saw back then that 1 in 12 family doctors closed their family practices. 3 million Ontarians back in the 1990s were without physicians and without access to care. We are now looking at being about 25 years later, give or take. And we know that there are already 1 million Ontarians without access to family doctors. We know that there aren't enough doctors here, despite the fact that we've been trying to grow the numbers since 1990. We still have very few physicians actually providing the services that 13 million Ontarians need. So we only have 450 ophthalmologists. We only have 2,000 emergency room physicians. We only have 1,000 radiologists. We only have 9,000 family doctors. There is still an absolute physician shortage that isn't accounted for. The fact that the CIHI data shows that more physicians are working in Ontario, that's a good thing. You can't argue that. That's a good thing. That's what the province needs. That's what the patients need. The waitlists show that there is still a huge mismatch between available healthcare resource and actual patient need.
Dr. Gandy, let me raise one thing with you, which clearly is different this time from the previous disputes with the government. I think the first one I covered was 1986, the attempt by the Peterson government to ban extra billing, and then there were fights with the Ray government and the Harris government. It's, you know, every government has its own challenges with the doctors of the province and vice versa. This one's different because I have seen an explosion on social media of doctors saying real nasty things about the government, about Eric Hoskins, about some of their colleagues. I've seen patients saying nasty things. Things have gotten a little bizarre out there. You're on social media every now and then, right? What do you think of all of that?
So I think it's regrettable that people on all sides of the debate tend to go over the top sometimes. I think it's a reflection on our times. We see social media getting very aggressive on a whole variety of issues. I mean, it's not just related to the Physician Services Agreement. It's important to recognize, from my personal experience, having lived through the mid-90s debacle, having seen what happened in '86, is that there was some anger and hostility back then too. I personally have not seen it as bad. And I lived through the mid-90s and I lived through '86 as well.
Dr. Resnick, I don't know how much time you spend on Twitter or Facebook, but some of the truly vicious comments I have seen said by doctors about other doctors, whether you supported or didn't support the agreement, you know, has been pretty gross at times. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think it's regrettable. I do spend a fair bit of time on social media, and I agree with both your and Dr. Gandhi's analysis that that this is regrettable. But if I might return quickly to something you asked Dr. Allen, and that's are we going to have people stopping wanting to be doctors in our system, has there or hasn't there been growth? Need to correct two facts. One, we have an overwhelming number of young people who want to go into medicine. At Queen's, we had 4,800 applications for our 100 seats, and that number has has constantly increased over the last 6 years that I've been dean there. And the other thing is Ontario medical schools have increased dramatically the number of seats over the last 15 years. So the reality is we are trying to provide more access to health care across specialty medicine and specifically across family medicine.
Dr. Gordon, what do you see a future where fewer people are going to be interested because of the lack of agreement between the OMA and the province of Ontario?
Never. Number one, people want to be doctors because they want to be doctors. People who want to be doctors will do anything to become a doctor. The number of trainees I have who've gone to places in the world that you never even heard of or could spell in order to go to medical school and then come back. And it's not easy. And I've been at the college for many years. We've gone through a whole process of vetting them so that they're at the level we want. So I don't believe for a minute there's going to be a shortage of medical school applicants. For those who want to be doctors, the drive is enormous. And what they want to do with it is very powerful, and I'm very impressed with them. So I don't think that's the issue. And I don't think we should start making decisions out of the fear. There were things done years ago that I think were an error in terms of decreasing the number of spaces in medical school based on some economic formula. I think that was an error, and it took us more than a decade to catch up on that. I think we've caught up, give or take a little.
Okay, we're down to our last few minutes here, and I want to do, speaking of social media, I want to put 2 tweets out to you and then put a question to you. There is a physician named Paul Conti who tweeted, "The hornet's nest has been poked because of this dispute." And there's a radiologist named David Jacobs, who's also very active on Twitter, who said, "Doctors have finally found their voice." Dr. Allen, what does that suggest, those kinds of tweets? What does that suggest in terms of getting this whole thing unstuck and getting it back on the rails? If I can mix my metaphors here.
I think doctors are very good at following rules and coloring within the lines. And I think what's happened now is that physicians have become so frustrated with the way the system's been mismanaged. They've become so tired of the bureaucratization that's impending through Bill 210 and that's still present right now, that they're now feeling a strength in numbers and being able to speak out against all of that. I think social media has helped bridge the gap of distance and time, and allowed physicians to join together and speak out. We're no longer just a single canary in the coal mine.
Well,
Right?
your Concerned Ontario doctors are how many at the beginning?
There were about 10,000, 11,000, and more are joining by day, and there are more who follow.
And you really were the driving force in getting this agreement turned down, weren't you? I mean, I think
We
you were anyway.
I think we helped put out a counter voice to what the OMA was saying, right? The OMA was giving a very hard, aggressive sell to get doctors to vote yes to the agreement. We offered a voice that said, there are problems with this agreement. These are the problems. This is why we are voting no.
And you prevailed.
Exactly.
Dr. Resnick, how about those 2 tweets I just said out a moment ago?
You know, when I applaud Dr. Allen and her colleagues for getting involved. The other day, on Monday, I spoke to our incoming medical students to give them their welcoming address. And the theme of my talk was get involved. And we want them to be part of the health system. And the problems we have are not going to be solved by administrators or politicians. They're going to be solved by integral involvement of the health profession. So I applaud Dr. Allen and her colleagues for having taken a stand. I happen to believe, as I said, that we would have been better served had the agreement been passed. But I encourage Dr. Allen, her colleagues, and all voices to come to the table. We have to coalesce in a unified way. It can't be a fractured way, and to get back to negotiations with the government.
Dr. Gandy, what do those tweets say to you?
You know, those tweets say to me that physicians have felt disenfranchised by this government for a very long period of time. You know, physicians are not necessarily managers of the healthcare system, even though we're told that we need to be stewards of the healthcare system. For my part, I actually, contrary to what may be believed, I actually had a hand in trying to manage the healthcare system. I was actually the founding chair of the family health team, and I was also the founding chair of the family health organization in our neck of the woods, and I was the LHIN's Health Links lead physician. And so I went to the table, right? And I presented my ideas, and I developed a healthcare provider portal that's reduced hospital admissions by 50% from nursing homes. So I did all of this. But every time I went to the table, personally speaking, the bureaucracy was crazy. Like, to try and get a healthcare provider portal that's saving lives in my community, I had to go to eHealth, then I had to go to the LHIN IT cluster, then I had to go back to the Ministry of Health IT division, then I had to talk to the eHealth liaison branch of and so on and so on. All right, and those kind of things have frustrated physicians no less, because to an extreme extent. And so when you get a situation where physicians are frustrated, they can't provide care to their government, then you get tweets like that saying, you know what, I'm really ticked off, and that's why I'm ticked off.
Dr. Gordon, last 30 seconds to you on this.
Democracy is very, very messy and cumbersome, and it takes a lot of time, but it's better than all the others.
So I hear.
So we have to learn to deal with it and work with it. And I understand frustrations. I've been there. I think anybody who's done that has been there. Yeah. But that doesn't mean you stop and give up and throw it all to the wind. We have to work on this. We have a collective commitment to our colleagues, but also to our, most important, to our patients and our communities to make this work. Because if we can't make it work, then we're really in trouble.
I want to thank all 4 of you for coming in tonight and having this very civilized discussion. Dr. Richard Resnick, the Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences at Queen's and Kingston. Good of you to join us on the line from Kingston, Ontario. Our other yes vote here today, Michael Gordon, the former head of geriatrics at Baycrest, and our 2 no voters as well. Dr. Nadia Alam, family doc and anesthesiologist, also one of the founders of Concerned Ontario Doctors. She practices in Georgetown. Dr. Sohail Gandhi, the family doc from Stainer Medical Center near Collingwood, Ontario. And I really should put an extra pitch in for you two, because unlike journalists or academics or others who, not to disparage them, but for you to be here, you had to get other people to cover your practice so that you could be here. And for that, we're very grateful that you could do that.
Well,
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.